Now pretty much everything you see in there has got to come out of there. Believe me, there are a lot of nuts and bolts and fasteners, and they're easy to get them mixed up. Here's a little tip that I use that helps me. I like to go to a hobby craft store and get some of these different compartments. They're just little plastic containers, multiple compartments. As I take something apart, the first thing I take apart, I'll put all those fasteners in here. The next thing I take apart, I put them in here. I keep on going down the way as far as you have to go. Therefore, when I'm going back together, I just do it in reverse. I just work my way back around this way. That way you can make sure you're using the right fasteners for the right device in the right order. Hopefully, when you get all the way back down here, you have no more bolts and you've got them all in there. Now, there really is no perfect way or exact way to take this apart. So what I like to kind of do is work from the top down and from the passenger side to the driver's side. That helps me remember when I'm going back together. From the top down and from the driver's side to the passenger side to the driver's side. Plus the fact I keep all my fasteners in order, it helps putting it back together. You always hate to get that situation where you've got something put back together and then you realize something else should have been in there, so you got to take it off, put it in, so forth. Well, this will help you eliminate that. So I like to start right down here and work my way up and over. So we're going to start with this trim panel down here. Take your weather strip off. Now most of these are actually push-in kind of snap covers. Some of them will have screws and things like that, so take a look at it as you go. Now we also have to take off this trim panel, so you've got to take your handle off. There's a lot of little bolts and screws that will have these little covers. To hide them, just pop them out. Now this handle, you'll see, has two in the front and two that are kind of hidden back there. So we've got all those as our first step. You can see the little clips that just snap in place on that. And we've got one connector. Now these are kind of flimsy plastic, so be careful. Don't manhandle them too hard, but they should just come out of there. There's two bolts up here that hold the skin down. They're underneath these covers. I take those bolts out, put my bolts in there, and my two skin covers. Now we have to take the airbag module out on the passenger side, so we're just going to take the glove box down. A couple bolts up here to hold it. They're held in with 8s. So to get this airbag out, there's two bolts that come up from here, and there's one comes from this side. When you take the airbag out, there'll be one connector on it. Disconnect that. Now as you're going to walk around with this, you want to be careful with this. This is basically a bomb and could detonate. So you want to carry it this way so that if it should accidentally detonate, it would go out that direction. And you need to take it somewhere in your shop where you can set it. Don't just put it where things can bang into it. Set it where it will be kind of taken care of. Now wherever you go set this down, don't set it down like this, because that's where the bag will blow up. You want the metal part to be down, so set it down like this. So should it accidentally deploy, you just have a bag going up in the air. If you go like this, then this metal is going to go flying. Got the 3 bolts for the airbag. There you go next. Now, keeping with my plan, working from that side over, you can appreciate now the method of keeping your nuts and bolts, because we got a lot of fasteners in here that have to come out. Now once you get this out for the passenger side airbag, there's no real connector for that. There's just 3 little bolts that are 5.5, and then this whole thing will come off. This bottom cover just has some little plastic push pins that hold that in, and then it comes out of the way. Now on most dashboards, the upper part of the speedometer will have 1 or 2 or 3 bolts holding this to this. So we have to take them out. So we take the 3 screws out of there. Now we have to take all this off because we actually have to drop the steering column down. Pop your fuse panel off. Now these 2 control knobs for the brake and the hood are going to have to come off. There's one on the top and there's one on the bottom. Now they can just sit down here and dangle. While I'm over here, I'm going to go ahead and take these trim panels off like we did on the other side. Now we continue with a couple more bolts here to get this lower kick panel off. There's a bolt behind it. Now in any of these connectors, if you see like a color, they're usually red, sometimes they're yellow. They're just little locking tabs. They make it so that you can take your connectors out better. Now we take the big piece off. Now when you're down here taking this bottom one off, here and sometimes other places you'll see a little wire with an eyelet through one of the bolts. That's a grounding eyelet, so be sure and put that back. Make a mental note of that. If you look right through here, this wire had this bolt and has a little eyelet running through it. Now this, you can just lay down out of the way. Now this hood release just kind of fiddles back around in there. That way I can get this out of my way so I can drop the steering column. Now you can see this bracket down here. It's held up with 4 bolts. They're 13s. It's best if you have a deep to get them out. Now when we drop the steering column down, because the gear shift is on the steering column, but the gear shift indicator is up in the dash, it's worked by this little wire, and we have to take that off or else we'll break it. Now the bottom of this is held on with another 5.5 bolt. And then you'll see this little string goes around like a hook up here. So that's it. This little string with the hook on it pulls out, hooks up on the arm. If you don't pull this out when you drop the steering column, you'll break this little wire, and then you'll have to replace your shift indicator. I just leave the bolt in there and let this just hang down. Do that. Now if you notice, this is just kind of like a protector. It doesn't hold the steering column up, but you can't drop it with it still in there. So you have to take this down, and I usually just leave it down here. And then we've got 4 more bolts that hold the steering column up. So the 4 bolts that hold the steering column up and the 4 bolts that hold that bracket up are all the same, so I just leave them lay on the floorboard. We've got 3 of the 4 done. I'll take this one done, it should come down. You see it begin to slide, so you want to support it while you take this one out. Now the steering column goes through the firewall on this particular model, so we're just going to let it lay on the floor. Now your brake pedal and gas pedal are all attached to the firewall. The steering column is attached to the dashboard. And it should just slide right on down. Just want to show you this shift indicator. Remember how it went down and attached at the bottom? But if you look up here, this tells you what gear you're in. So when you pull this, you can see that it's telling you what gear you're in. So if you ever have one of these that's broken, you've probably got this broke. You don't have to take your steering column down nor all of this off, but you do have to get this unhooked, and then it hooks in right up underneath here. Now the bottom of the dashboard is held on right here. There's 2, sometimes 3 bolts right here. One goes that direction. The other one goes the other direction. Well, as you can see, we've got a lot of this dashboard apart. Now I haven't showed you every little single bolt, but you pretty much have to take loose every bolt that's attaching it to the firewall. There's a lot of them, and there's a few brackets. If you look down here on the left hand side, there's a bracket here. It's just impossible to show you with the camera and everything. And then back on this side, there's another bracket. And then right up here in front, there's a little bar. So anything that's attaching it to the floor or attaching it to the firewall, you basically have to remove, because we're going to pull it back. I always like to take the speedometer loose because it's got connectors in it and a pigtail here. So if you don't take that loose, you might run into the problem getting a snag with that. So I just take it loose, unhook them, and that way I'm not going to have a problem with the speedometer. Now at this point, I think we're about ready to start pulling it out of here. So we'll get that set up and show you how we get to that black box that's buried down in there. We've got all those bolts up there. You're going to have one to undo right here, and the same thing on the other side. And that's kind of what keeps the bottom of it in. It's kind of like a hinge point. Now if you happen to have another guy that can help you, it's a whole lot easier. One over here and one over here. I'm going to try and do this with just one person, just so that you can have more visual impact on it and see what's going on.